Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Common Council meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, administration of the oath of office by City Clerk Deb Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll be giving the oath to Mayor Bob McManus, Alderperson Michael Fire, Quentin Rosendish, Ed Wagner, Adam Fisher, and Tom Budke. Please raise your right hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Pronounce your name.
Bob
Ed Wagner. Quentin Rosendish.
And repeat after me. Do solemnly swear
Do
Do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
the
the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the municipal code of the City of Marshfield,
the municipal
code of the City of Marshfield,
and will perform the duties
and will perform the duties
to which I have been elected
which I have been elected
to the best of my ability,
to the best
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
All right, roll call, please.
Fire,
Here.
Cecil,
Here.
Solstice,
Here.
Bargander,
Here.
Wagner,
Here.
Witzel,
Here.
Fisher,
Present.
Burrows, here, Budke,
Here.
and Hendler.
Here.
All right, item D, public comment period. At this time, the mayor will recognize members of the public who have indicated their desire to address the council. Upon recognition by the mayor, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. Council may take action on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. I know there is one person here that does want to speak, but we're also on a delay of about 30 seconds. So after this person speaks, we'll see if anybody else is on the line. Please state your name and address.
Gloria Bargander, 206 Hawthorne Avenue. Mayor and Common Council, hello. I hope everyone is staying healthy. I would like to address a situation that I noticed this weekend. We decided to go for a ride in Marshfield. We drove through the parking lots of Walmart and Menards. Both parking lots were full of vehicles. It sure seemed to us that they were not all there to buy essentials. We saw a couple of big screen TVs as they exited the store. We also noticed 6 vehicles from the following states: Kentucky, Colorado, 2 from Minnesota, Illinois, Alabama, and Florida. We witnessed younger children with their parents going into and coming out of Walmart. On the way home, we witnessed a group of 6 teenagers hanging out in the Dairy Queen parking lot. As a person that is of higher risk of getting this virus, I have even greater interest in keeping the virus from spreading. I propose that something be done about these issues before we end up with many COVID-19 cases here in Marshfield. I know that it's been hard on everyone, but I would hate to start this lockdown all over again. I feel that some people aren't taking the stay-at-home order seriously. Hopefully we don't end up paying the price for their selfishness. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the council? Anyone else on the telephone that wishes to address the council? We'll give this about another 30 seconds or so. While we're waiting for that, is Steve Bargon? I don't see Steve on the call.
He just walked by. He should be joining in a second.
with that, I think we've waited long enough. We will go ahead and close the public comment period, and we'll go to item E, reading of the appointments of the Common Council to various committees, boards, and commissions presented by Bob McManus. So you all should have received your copy of this earlier today. On the Board of Public Works, Mike Fire, Ken Bargender, Tom Butke, Adam Fisher, Quentin Rosendich. Finance, Budget, and Personnel, Pete Hendler, Rebecca Spiros, Nick Paschal, Tom Witzel, Ed Wagner. Judiciary and License, Nick Paschal, Tom Witzel, Rebecca Spiros, and alternate Ed Wagner. The Airport Committee, Ed Wagner. The Business Improvement District, Quentin Rosendich. The Communications Committee, Tom Butke. The Central Wisconsin State Fair Board of Directors, Ken Bargender. The City Plan Commission, Quentin Rosendich. Committee on Aging, Mike Fire. The Community Development Authority, Pete Hendler and Mike Fire. Economic Development Board, Adam Fisher and Tom Butke. The Fairgrounds Commission, Tom Witzel, Tom Butke, Ken Bargender. Housing Rehab, Nick Paschal. Historic Preservation Committee, Ken Bargender. Library Board of Trustees, Adam Fisher. The Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, Quentin Rosendich. Main Street, Marshfield, Mike Fire. The Utility Commission, Tom Witzel and Ed Wagner. And the University Commission, Nick Paschal, Rebecca Spiros, and Mike Fire. If there are no questions on that, I'll seek a motion to approve those appointments.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hendler, a second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Fire,
Yes.
Paschal,
Yes.
Rosendich,
Yes.
Bargander,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Spiros, yes, Butke,
Yes.
and Hendler.
Yes.
Thank you. So the next is the reading of the citizens' appointments to various committees, boards, and commissions presented by myself. So Airport Committee, John Berg being reappointed. The Board of Appeals, Steve Okonek. The Board of Review, Bob Lawrence. Business Improvement District, Patrick Schreiner and Scott Coran. Communications Committee, Matt McLean. City Plan Commission, Ken Wood, John Caprillion, and Steve Okonek. Committee on Aging, Tanya Kuniger and Ken Swenson. The Economic Development Board, Aaron Staub. Fire and Police Commission, Dean Pitt, and you all have received a resume and cover letter for him as well for your consideration. Historic Preservation Committee, Chris Keogh and Bill Penker. Library Board of Trustees, Joanne Amp and Don Schnitzler. Parks and Rec, Chris Meyer and Randy Krogman. And that is it for the citizen appointments. Tonight, there's no action on this tonight, information only, and these would be come for your approval on the next meet on the 28th. If there's no questions any questions on those? Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. I noticed you have a couple of openings. Board of Appeals and Board of Review have alternate spots that are open. Is this due to a lack of people stepping forward, or what is happening with those positions?
Yeah, those are always tough to fill. They've been historically tough to fill, but we're still looking to get those done.
Okay. Additionally, I see that there's a change to the Fire and Police Commission. Mm-hmm. Was there a reason why the existing individual wasn't added or wasn't renewed? Was he not interested, or what happened?
He and I did have discussions, but Dean Pitt, if you look at his resume, he's got a strong background in the sheriff's office. I think that would be a very good addition to the current commission that's there. So
was that other individual not interested?
I believe he was, but he's served for 15 years and he's on 3 other committees as well right now. Well, actually 2 other committees, but one of them has 2 separate meeting points. So he has 3 different meetings that he's in right now. And I think that Dean Pitt will be a very good fit for this commission.
The concern I have is that we're now putting another person on, and we're going to have 3 members with less than 5 years experience during a pandemic. We're going to have 2 members with less than 2 years experience on that committee or that commission, again, during a pandemic. And I'm wondering if this is the best time to make a change.
Well,
that's all I have. Thank you.
Yep. I mean, you bring up a very good point, but when you look at the experience of the person there that has been a sheriff since, early 19, actually just before that, certainly that would be a very good experience for the commission to have that kind of hands-on experience in being a first responder. It's not often that you get someone with 30 years of experience that would be able to go on there. And I think that would be bring a very added value to the current commission that's there. Anything else? Mr. Butke.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the chief, Mr. Grasma, what did the commission feel? Did they want Mr. Keogh back on there, or what was their take on it?
I don't know if I can speak on behalf of the whole commission, but I know that Mr. Keogh did express his interest to be coming back onto that committee. But I'm not sure. I know that he did express that interest, but not exactly. I guess I won't speak on behalf of the whole commission.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I thought I saw other hands. Mr. Fire.
Yeah, on the Committee on Aging, we have Mary Perkerpile. She won't be on the committee anymore, so we'll have a blank one there. She's not well, so we'll have to find another one. So we can take her name off, and it'll be blank.
We'll add one. Okay. Mrs. Spiros.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to also follow up on the Police and Fire Commission appointment, or recommendation for appointment. I talked to Dr. Keogh, and he was definitely interested in being on the Fire and Police Commission again for another term. He's served us really well. I want to commend him on everything he's done for the community. He's a true leader, and I have to agree with Mr. Whittle in the timing of this doesn't seem to be the right time to be appointing for the second year in a row a new member to the Police and Fire Commission. And additionally, I kind of just wanted to ask if there's a particular reason why Mr. Keogh was not reappointed when he did express interest, and to my knowledge has served the committee very, very well.
Yes, he has served, and when I spoke with him yesterday, he and Andy and I have talked a few times. He has served the committee very well. I just believe that, especially in times of a pandemic, when you can get somebody with 30 years of experience in one of the fields that is expressly on there, I believe that's very valuable. Something that I think will be an added value to the commission that's there. Andy has served for 15 years, and he's done a good job. But his term is up, and so we are looking to appoint somebody, I believe, with very, very good credentials. Mr. Hendler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought about this too, and hopefully I'm wrong, but Dr. Keogh is a person that is well renowned throughout the university system for his administrative abilities, and I've seen him do some really marvelous things at one of the two-year campuses in Fox Valley. And I find it's very hard to accept because he's knowledgeable. He has a number of degrees in different areas, and he served the community well, and I really would like to have him serve further. But in the final analysis, you begin to wonder why. And there are a lot of things out in the community, and by the time you weed through all of this, I've heard the word used as vendetta. Now, that's a pretty heavy word, but from the fact that what I have seen, what I have heard, makes it a very serious accusation that someone is playing politics with the Fire and Police Commission because it's supposed to be an independent organization, and it has remained that. And I cannot see the integrity of that organization being damaged with these kind of innuendos that are there. Now, I cannot support the new person, even though he has a long list of references, and I would really like to see Dr. Keogh continue in that service. I will not support the new person because I feel that something is going awry here, and we need to keep that organization independent from politics. So, Mr. Mayor, please reconsider your situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And, just understand, he's being appointed, but ultimately the council makes the decision. So, in regards to your comments, I have no idea what it is you're talking about. But I will tell you this. I believe, and as I have thanked Andy for his work, 15 years, and Andy is continuing his work on the CDA, which is a very important committee, as well as the Housing Rehab Committee. He's got 3 different meetings that he goes to. And one thing that we always do is we always, do we have enough people to go around? And when you have, somebody with this kind of resume coming on, I feel that would be beneficial. However, at the end of the day, you all make the decision. So although I appreciate what you're, the comments you're bringing up, Mr. Hendler, if you don't look to do the appointment, that's fine. This is somebody that I would certainly support because of the amount of experience they have in that related field, in management and everything else. So, but at the end of the day, if you all don't support it, that's fine, and you'll just exercise your vote. Mr. Wagner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have to reflect a little bit on something that Mr. Handler touched briefly on, and we're reminded, and I guess in my experience on the council, I was reminded several times of the fact that the Fire and Police Commission is one of the three commissions that have statutory guidelines that keep them independent from the public body, namely us. The other 2 are CDA and the utility, and then, of course, Fire and Police Commission.
Mr. Wagner, just hang on just one second. We're getting a lot of feedback noise. There's a lot of background noise. So if you're not talking, if you can mute your phone so we can hear it, that would be appreciated. I'm sorry for interrupting, Mr. Wagner. Go ahead.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that there are three commissions that are assured of their independence from the Common Council, from us, from the politics that we normally do by statute. And the Fire and Police Commission is the one that has the strongest background on that. I think what the council needs to know, and the council needs to determine in any nominee, is that person that whoever we put on that commission will abide by and force the independence of that body. And so what I'd like to do is if this gentleman would like to come before the council on the 28th and introduce himself to us and let us question him so so that we might be able to convince ourselves that he is or is not somebody that will guarantee the independence of that commission. I'd like to see him appear before us at that time, if that's all right with you.
Sure, I'll definitely invite him to that, and that would be fine. Anything further?
Thank you very much.
Yep, anything further? All right, seeing nothing, item G, reading of appointment of Chair of Zoning Board of Appeals. And that would be, is that Steve Dean Marquardt being reappointed to that, to the Board of Appeals?
I believe so. I'm not sure. Do you know that, Josh?
So that is what I'm recommending then, to reappoint Dean Marquardt to the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve Dean Marquardt. Motion by Mr. Bargender. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Butke. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll do a roll call vote.
Hold it.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Butke.
Yeah, this is the first time, I could be mistaken, but this is the first time in 21 years that I think we nominated a chairman. I have nothing against Mr. Marquardt being the chairman, but I don't ever remember us doing that before.
And if you would like to change that to just appoint him to the Zoning Board of Appeals, you certainly could.
Yeah, because the committees, don't they normally elect their chairman?
Okay, Deb.
We have been doing this for the last couple of years, Tom, and it was brought to our attention that for state statute, the mayor needs to appoint the chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I missed part of that, Deb. Did you say that you could do that or you should do that?
We have been doing this for the last couple of years this way because the state statute says that the mayor is to appoint the chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And
is that the only one then? Where I'm going with this is I don't want somebody appointing chairman of our other committees, and I hope we don't go there.
This is the only committee that we're directed to do that.
Okay, I'm fine then, Mayor.
Mr. Wagner, did I see you? Okay, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is more of a point of order. I was slipped a note from my wife that on the broadcast feed, it popped in and out of popped in and out of the live broadcast and went with the 414 council meeting. So if you could please advise the TV folk that it's been doing that the feed has been flipping back and forth, I'd appreciate it.
We'll do that.
More of a point of order. I apologize.
The other thing is, for some reason, we're still getting background noise from somewhere. So if you could mute your phones, that would be appreciated. Item H, election of the Common Council.
Mayor?
Yes, Deb.
I need to do roll call yet so we can vote on.
I'm sorry.
Appointment.
Please roll call vote.
Fire?
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes.
Rosendish?
Yes.
Bargander?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Farrell?
Yes.
Butke?
Yes.
And Hendler?
Yes.
All right, now on to item H, election of the Common Council President. With that, we'll open up nominations. Mr. Hendler.
I would nominate Tom Witzel for council president.
Tom Witzel? I thought I saw other hands.
You did, Mayor. That was me. I was going to say the same thing.
Same here, Your Honor.
Okay. So any further nominations? Mr. Wagner.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that the nominations be closed and a unanimous ballot be cast for Mr. Wetzel.
So the nominations are closed, and then we will do a roll call vote.
Do we have a second, Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry. A second
I will do that.
Second from Mr. Butke. So now we'll do a roll call vote.
Fire?
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes.
Rosendish?
Yes.
Argander,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Sparrow,
Yes.
Butke,
Yes.
and Henler.
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. I'm honored and humbled by this. Thank you.
Item I, discuss financial assistance to local businesses due to the COVID-19 health crisis presented by Bob McManus. So we're all aware that the coronavirus issue continues to be a part of our life. It's been difficult for many people, and at the same time, there are many people that are working very hard to keep everyone safe. But there's two concurrent realities. The first is that we're under a safer at home order from the governor based on national information of this deadly virus. The numbers of those infected with this virus is high, as are the numbers of death. This order is in place to keep people safe. The other concurrent reality is that people have to pay their bills and make a living. Everyone in the country has been affected by this. However, there are those that are completely out of work and been shut down, but their bills keep coming. Debt does not care about a virus. Federally, there's been a stimulus known as the PPP, as well as others that have helped many businesses with payroll and other expenses. Additionally, the SBA has stepped in on many SBA loans. They're making payments for businesses on the SBA loans for up to 6 months. As well, the federal stimulus helped many folks individually on the day-to-day expenses, and they're very close to a second stimulus. Many people have been helped with these programs. However, many people have received nothing and have fallen between the cracks and have received no help. Those are the people that I would like to get help too. We can't solve all the problems, but maybe we can make it a little better. Maybe we can help those small businesses to give them a boost to make it through. Entrepreneurs are very strong people, but everyone needs a little help every now and again. This past Friday, I presented an idea to Josh Miller, the City Development Services Director, early in the morning. Later that day, Josh connected with Al Nystrom, with Mackey, with Scott and others at Mackey, and Kaylee Gomez of Mann Street. By the end of the day, it was beginning of an application and guidelines that were pondered over the weekend. In order to fully vet this program, I sent an email to Ron Allman, the Finance Director, on information from the city's finances. I forwarded that information to you for your review. You also have an exchange of that packet. As well, I had discussions and dialogue with the city attorney for legal implications. I was very satisfied with his response, and we really appreciate the guidance. We also spoke with members of Mosinee who have implemented a very similar program with great response. And as a side note, other cities are looking to this program as well. In a nutshell, the idea is to create a Marshfield COVID relief stimulus for local businesses that are outside of their home in the city of Marshfield with a brick and mortar building that have not received any assistance from the PPP or other federal business programs. The assistance would be a one-time grant in an amount not to exceed $1,500. To qualify for this grant, you would need to fill out a simple one-page application and provide a copy of your mortgage, rent, or lease statement and copies of your most recent utility bills for 1 month. Your grant would be in the amount of these items not to exceed $1,500. Distribution of the funds would be on a first-come, first-served basis, and the program would expire with the depletion of the funds. Start date of receiving application, all pending Common Council approval, would be Monday, April 27th at 9 a.m., and first disbursements would take place on Wednesday, April 29th. Applications would be made available on Friday, April 24th, which would give us a few days to get the information out to the public. I do want to reiterate, these dates can all be changed. This is all pending your approval. I would ask for initial funding of $40,000 to be taken out of the Common Council Contingency Fund. As you know, this fund is set aside every year for unforeseen issues. I believe that this issue that we have right now is the most unforeseen thing we could see. And then additionally, when meetings do start again, I would ask the EDB to review this for further funding and to go along with the program or create one very similar. With that, I will answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't try to run this through the EDB, because one of the reasons that the EDB was established is that all the community organizations involved in economic development would be at the table and could help make decisions, and they would quite likely be the right kind of body. They have the makeup to administer a grant program like this. Secondly, the EDB oversees an economic development fund, which is, it's called the 205 Fund, which I'm sure Mr. Allman is familiar with, and that money is set aside specifically for economic development projects instead of the city's contingency fund. The other thing about this is I've looked at the timeline on it. This thing takes place in 1 week. I can't believe that the thing could be put together, implemented, and put out in 1 week without making some huge mistakes somewhere along the line. I think this needs a lot more thought and a lot more planning to it. And I guess I want to give the help to the businesses. The thing that was interesting, what I find interesting about this, is that the county board today, Mrs. Rosar, Supervisor Rosar, gave a very passionate plea to help 31 industries who in Marshfield will go out of business if they don't get assistance next week. I don't know how she knows this or where she gets this information. And then at the end of the meeting, when the meeting adjourned, she came over and said, well, will you vote for the mayor's project tonight? And, you know, I find that that tells me there's something going on here. There's some kind of a movement, coalition happening somewhere to put this thing together. And what I'd like to, and I think that's rushing it. And I think what I'd like to see this referred back to the Economic Development Board, and they be instructed to convene as soon as possible to act on this, to put it together and act on it. Also, to change the designation of where the funds come from, because this way we won't have to make any adjustments to the city's budget at all. I'm not even sure if we'd have to have a resolution charging it to the 205 fund. I'm not even sure we'd need that. But anyway, yeah, I'd like to put that in the form of the motion to refer this to the Economic Development Board, and that is a motion.
There is a motion to refer to the Economic Development Board. Mr. Hendler, is that a second?
That is a second, sir.
There is a second, and any discussion? While you are considering that, I'm sure that you received in your packet the 205 fund that was, you could see exactly how much is in there, because those were considerations that we went through with Ron to see how much is there. And it could be another, it absolutely could be a funding source. The other issue is the citizens here in Marshfield are coming up with their rents that they have to make on May 1st. And so we could absolutely send this to the EDB, which is a very good thing to do. And they will probably, depending on what action you take either today or next week, they could probably convene, and I'm not sure when they would be able to get that done. So this is why this would mimic the way it is set up. Now, as I said in the display or in the outset of it, all of the dates are just an idea of this is the way it could go. If you wanted to say you implement it whenever, you might say May 10th or whatever it is. It was just, what I was trying to get across to you is how many people were involved in this. We had legal look at it. We had finance look at it. But if you all would like to send the idea to the EDB, that's just fine. Mr. Butke.
Yeah, Josh, you can speak to this, but what I'm wondering is it's going to be hard to get the EDB people together, especially if we're going to go through virtual like we are tonight. Is there a way that the council could make a motion to do this pending the approval of the EDB? And is it possible that Josh could contact by telephone the members? Is that permissible?
Was that?
I'm going to jump in here for a minute, and maybe Hap will join us in a second, too. I mean, you're going to talk in your next item a little bit about the mayor's veto regarding committee, board, and commission meetings. That may go a long way toward where we're headed as far as getting the EDB and others together. I would be concerned about the idea that Josh is going to make phone calls. And the one thing we can't do, and I don't think you were really suggesting this, Tom, is try and get around the open meeting law. So you have to be really careful on these kind of things. But I think bringing this to the EDB is a really great idea, and I think there's got to be a way to make it work in terms of the idea of getting a virtual meeting or something of that sort.
Okay, but I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure it's going to be as easy as you think virtually trying to get the members together. But whatever we got to do.
And the other thing is, as I said when I laid out the program, is this would go to the EDB for their review and potential. I mean, if you all wanted to do 40,000 or 20,000 to start, or whatever, there's nothing saying that the EDB can't fund more or refund the request of the monies that come out. I'm hearing, and I know you are as well, our business community, the people out there, they're hurting. And they have a big voice. And this happens in government. We'll just tie it up in red tape and we'll take it all along. And then what happens is the people in the public, they feel like, who's listening to me? So this program, the way it is, has worked brilliantly in Mosinee. In Mosinee, they didn't even go to a committee. They just went straight to the city administrator and took in the information, and they wrote out a check. So
that's what I'm trying to do.
That doesn't mean that we have to do it, but it just means this has been well thought out. This has been from folks at Mackey. They liked it. We've had our financial review. We've had legal review. But we could certainly, absolutely go on with your motion. Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. The expression "no good deed goes unpunished." I'm sure that if we take action or don't take action or whatever it might be, we're going to be facing some kind of ridicule. The other thing is this is unprecedented times, and I think time is of the essence of this. I do agree that the EDB is where this belongs. The other concern I have is that by using the 40,000 from contingency, that basically drains all of our contingency that we have remaining with more than half of a fiscal year to go. The other questions I guess I have, since the majority of these businesses that would be helped, if I'm correct, based on the items listed here, would be the downtown businesses. I'm wondering if the BID has any monies from the monies that they tax of themselves, or if the facade program could be utilized, since this is for downtown, and I realize that would probably take some sort of action for us to use those monies, but I really don't think there's going to be a whole lot of construction happening downtown, and I think maintaining businesses is maybe a little more crucial at this moment. So I guess I'd like to see maybe some other funding sources as an option. I'd like to see the EDB take action as soon as possible. But I'm a little concerned with draining our contingency down to nothing. Thank you.
And you could, to that point, you could always make a motion to do less than the 40, 20 or 30, and but you always have that right as well. Mr. Wagner.
Yes, I checked with Josh Miller yesterday morning, and he is the de facto custodian of the 205 fund, I guess, since he oversees the Economic Development Board. He serves as staff. And basically, the amount of money that's available in that fund is approximately $1.2 million at this point. The BID, we've been after the BID board to allocate more money than just enough to pay for Main Street, which is all they do. They pay the administrative fee for Main Street. That's all they levy every year. And they've never had any extra money in that pot at all, ever. The other one, the facade program, I think has come to a halt. I don't think there's any money in there. I think the intention, the last intention I saw was that if there was a facade program that was worthwhile that would add to the economic development of the town, that they could go back and ask the council for money for a special facade program from that. So basically, all those other sources of funding need to be looked at, and basically we should have known that. We should know that before we embark or propose a complete program. And that's what I'm saying. Let's do this. Now Tom mentioned bureaucratic red tape. The bureaucratic red tape actually has a reason, a purpose, and it's called not saying oops. It's basically making sure that public monies, and these are public monies, are spent for a good public purpose or a necessary public purpose, and that it's being spent honestly and wisely and the whole thing, and that we're being good stewards of that money. So, yes, I don't like red tape any more than anybody else, but I do know the purpose for it. And I do think we would do ourselves a great honor if we came up with a well-refined program. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Spiros, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Anything further? Steve?
Thank you. Just to follow up on Tom Witzel's question, as far as the business improvement district, that makes some sense, except they do make a commitment in the previous year, late summer every year for the following year's budget. And every year since I've been here, they've committed the entire amount of the bid tax to Main Street's budget. So they've dedicated the entire $66,000 for this year to hand over to Main Street. They have discussions during their meetings about whether Main Street is accomplishing their objectives, but there are no additional funds from the Business Improvement District for this particular calendar year.
Right, and I do think that in the much of the information that we've discussed tonight is in the information that I gave you in the packet. There, it's down to the dollar how much is in the 205 fund. So we do know where we can get it. It's perfectly fine to send it over, but this has been vetted a few different ways, and the council, you all, certainly have every right to take a look at what the people are feeling out there and make a room from this contingency. We're not from our contingency fund. It's not like we're going to go out spending anything. An economic business to help businesses, I think, is a good thing. But at the end of the day, the motion is to refer to the EDB. Is there any further discussion on that? Mr. Bucky, are you raising your hand or no?
I am not.
Okay. All right. So, Deb, can you read that motion? I believe it's to refer to the EDB. Was that it, Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, Deb, I don't know if I added to it or that I want them to have them address it as soon as possible.
EDB as soon as possible. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, then please roll call vote.
Fire?
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes.
Rosendish?
Yes.
Bargander?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Wetzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Spiros? Yes. Budke?
Yes.
Pendler?
Yes.
All right, and that motion carries. Thank you. Item J, council option to consider an override of the mayor's veto of council motion CC 20-067, the meeting schedule presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, at the last meeting on April 14th, the council did take action, and I'm going to just read it because it's the easiest thing to do. Motion by Witzel, second by Fisher, to resume meetings, small committee meetings be provided in person, and large committee meetings be provided with an option of virtual meetings while maintaining an active evaluation of current conditions to be moved to in-person meetings as soon as possible. A couple of days later, Mayor McManus vetoed that motion, and as part of his veto, he indicated that there would not be committee meetings until further notice, but the council meeting tonight and the next regular council meeting on April 28th would take place as scheduled. Under state law, in order to override a veto of a mayor, it requires 2/3 of all the members of the council, not just those present and participating, but all the members. So in this case, I believe everybody's here tonight anyway, it would require 7 votes to override this. And I think ultimately there may end up being either tonight or Tuesday night, some discussion of how we move forward from this point anyway. But right now, the issue at hand is whether or not the council wants to override the veto made by the mayor last week.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes, I move that the council override the veto.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Wetzel, is that a second? Any discussion? Before I'll get you, Mr. Wetzel. Steve, can you let me know or let the council know how many meetings are scheduled between now and the next council meeting?
Yeah, there's nothing in the docket between now and the next council meeting, which made this a little less impactful. This last week of the month, we normally don't have committee, board, and commission meetings. So for the 28th of April, there will not be, as far as I know, and I'm looking at other staff people to see if I'm wrong, I don't think there are before then.
There was a little bit of feedback there. So are you saying then, Steve, that between today and next Tuesday, when the council reconvenes to go through this virtually, you're saying that there's no other meetings?
I am personally not aware of any committee, board, or commission meetings in the next 7 days. So unlike if this had happened earlier in the month, there doesn't seem to be the impact for the following week.
Okay. Mr. Butke.
Yeah, we just made a motion. Mr. Wagner just made a motion. I saw Josh with his hand up to meet as soon as possible for the EDB. So that's going to be one that we would have there. Furthermore, I think we decided last time that we thought we could have enough space in between the people. We've done it one other time. And if anybody was uncomfortable, they could do it. They could show up on Zoom and do it that way. So I'm going to go along with overriding.
And overriding would mean then you're okay with smaller meetings and all other meetings to be in person at the discretion of the members of that. Is that
members of the council, and then if people in the committees that if they're uncomfortable, then they could do it through Zoom.
Right, but basically what you're doing by overturning this, which is fine, you absolutely can do it. Basically what you're saying is then you're okay with going back to physical meetings in person.
Yes.
Because there are city staff that were very uncomfortable with that, and so.
Well, I had asked that at the last meeting. I said, "What about staff?" And I know Dan mentioned or planned on having a meeting, and I did ask staff at that time, but maybe you got some other people that were concerned. But please, staff, if you're uncomfortable, let us know when we ask that question.
Mr. Barg.
Thank you, Mayor. And I put a little piece of this in the staff report that I sent out, because I know this question has come up. When we were on the Zoom call last week, I think, Tom, you were the one who threw it out there and didn't get a lot of feedback from the staff members on the Zoom call. Maybe they were a little bit uncomfortable. There are members of the staff, to be honest with you, who think we shouldn't be meeting in person, even in smaller groups, because we might be, going against the intent or the spirit of the governor's directive, even if it's allowed. But I think the overriding theme of the staff people that I've heard from, the department and division heads, is that if the council and the committees want to meet in person, go for it. But staff would like to be exempted so that we can be in our office or at our home to participate. And that's what I wrote.
Right, and that was offered then, so.
Right. So with that in mind, I don't think staff is really objecting, even if some people may feel it's not the best thing we can do. But our role is to support the council and the committees. We just want to have the opportunity to participate remotely.
Sure.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From my recollection, when Alderman Witzel made the motion and I second the motion. We talked about as a council, having the council have the option for council meetings to have those be in person or virtual. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory serves me that could also participate virtually. At least that was my understanding when I seconded the motion. I understand staff's concerns, and I don't want anyone to attend a meeting physically if they're not feeling comfortable or feeling safe. And so I want to say that. I appreciate anyone who feels concerned, but if I go back to what I believe was the intent of the motion for committee meetings, was that for example, the Board of Public Works, Finance, Budget, and Personnel, the 5 council members would be in the meeting and participating with social distancing. Today, I was at a county board meeting. There are 19 county board supervisors in Wood County. 18 of them were at the meeting, and we followed proper social distancing. One supervisor who has a poor immune system joined us by a feature very similar to Zoom. There was no problems. Staff participated virtually, but the meeting was conducted. I feel strongly that we can protect people if people feel uncomfortable, but still continue to do business as usual. And quite frankly, if there's not a need for a meeting, let's not schedule a meeting. And I don't think that should be the case just because we have a pandemic. If there doesn't need to be a meeting, don't schedule a meeting, is my thought. But we are exempt under the governor's order to continue to do business. And if business needs to be done at these committees, I think we need to do it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Witzel?
Thank you. For the record, I realize that the motion as it was read back did not reflect many of the comments that had taken place, as Mr. Fisher has pointed out. I know I had talked about the concern of staff filling the room or having to attend in person, and I went back and watched the video, the YouTube video, and at 1:18:30 in the YouTube video, my comments about staff attending meetings was discussed, and I had made the comment that the elected officials should meet in person if possible, and staff members could call in. That would also avoid having too many people in the room. So that wasn't necessarily reflected in the motion that was made and passed, but you know, I look around at the images that are on the screen right now. I know that I have some colleagues that are maybe in slightly concerning states of health where maybe potential pandemic situations may cause some concern. So I guess I would say if we can meet in person, if we feel comfortable meeting in person, we should. But if those members of those committees don't want to meet in person, would rather call in, I think that needs to be an option. As Mr. Barg mentioned at our last meeting, this may be an opportunity for us to identify whether or not committees really truly need to meet, as Mr. Fisher has mentioned. You know, I'm calling in remotely to this meeting right now, and I'm hearing a whole lot of stuff, feedback, background noise, all sorts of other things that make it quite difficult, I think, to do my elected duty. So that's why I think in the future I will be in person as much as possible. Again, if I were to be concerned of my health or my possibility of causing ill to someone else, I would choose to come in remotely. But I think that this is an important thing. We do need to be doing our jobs as elected officials. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I think the staff has to know is there is no way any of us would want to put them to a risk that was greater than it absolutely had to be. We want to keep the risk to the staff as low as possible, and that's very true. I've got a lot of friends on staff. There is no way I would want to put them through that kind of trauma. But at the same time, there is this problem that we have have, and that is we are elected to govern. And what's going on right now is the oversight committees aren't meeting. We aren't discussing the things we should be discussing. One of the things we brought up, Mr. Fisher mentioned the county board today. One of the things that was brought up is the county board is going to be facing a tremendous budget problem. First of all, with the lack of sales tax that's coming in, and that is going to be very reflected in the number of roads they can do and the number of people they can serve, the financing for the health department, everything. The other thing is that we know, for instance, that the Park and Recreation Department is probably experiencing revenue losses from programs. Those things are going to be missing from them. It's going to create a hole in their budget. We know that people aren't going to hotel rooms, and that we know that the room tax is going to be almost non-existent for another couple of months. That money, it's not just funding the Convention and Visitors Bureau, not just nice little glossy brochures. That money goes to maintain parks, and some of it goes to Wildwood Zoo. We should be meeting to discuss the problems that we are going to be facing and let the department heads take a good look at it, give us the feedback on it, and let us make decisions about how to mitigate that rather than wait till the glorious day when all of a sudden everything opens up miraculously and then we find out we haven't got any money. That's the reason we need to be meeting. And we need to be doing it in the safest way possible. Social distancing within the meetings, video when possible. But I think we need to start meeting. We're elected to govern, not to hide.
Thank you. Any, Steve? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Spiros.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this got so complicated. What I recall from the meeting was a discussion on these, whether we could have these virtually or in person, and I left with the impression that we would have a choice, that we could take this day by day, just like the federal government is, just like the state governments are doing. They're taking this pandemic day by day. Rules are changing every single day. It's very fluid. So I'm not sure how this ended up getting so complicated. I thought, like I said, that we left with the ability to have both council and committee meetings either virtually or in person. To me, that's what makes the most sense at this point in time. And I think that I agree that we need to continue to have meetings. Our committees need to be able to meet. We're pushing, the envelope on probably pushing things out far enough that they're finally going to need to be discussed. And so I think that we do need to be meeting for sure, but we just have options available. Obviously, I think that meeting in person probably does tend to probably be slightly more productive. At least that's my opinion. But something is better than nothing, and we do have to bear in mind that we're trying to keep everybody safe. While we have, we have, not just ourselves to consider, but our families and staff, of course. I want to remind staff, though, that while I have many, many, many superpowers, reading your minds is not one of them. So if you're asked, whether you have a problem, please be forthright and let us know that. Otherwise, we don't know what you were thinking. So my suggestion would be that we take this day by day and that we continue meetings, and whether they're virtual or in person, probably should be up to the chair of the committee, in my personal opinion. That's it.
All right. Mr. Barg.
Thank you, Mayor. Really, I think that Mr. Wagner and Mrs. Spiro said this pretty well, but I just want to tack on real shortly. It's important for us to restart the committee process as we get into May. the agenda you're going to see on April 28th is going to have a number of items, regular agenda items that would normally go through Board of Public Works, Finance, Budget, and Personnel, or Judiciary and Licensing. And the fact that those committees bake the issues and have their decisions put on the consent agenda, I think makes the council more productive. So whatever does it, I won't get into the whole virtual versus in person, but as we head toward May, it'll be good to hopefully get the committees meeting again and doing their work.
Anything further? All right, seeing nothing, Mr. Wolfgram.
You know, you're about to vote on whether or not on the mayor's veto, but I will tell you that based on this record, I'm not sure that staff has direction in terms of what's going to happen moving forward, and maybe that's not that critical right now because we don't have anything scheduled, but I am concerned that whether you approve or disapprove of the veto, that we have clarity in terms of what's going to happen moving forward, because there has been a spectrum here stated in terms of different points of view, and I think that's the problem with the motion that was made last time, was that, you know, the comments don't get into the motion, and right now you basically are going to be, you know, your motion is whether or not to approve the veto or not, and direction moving forward is what's going to be pretty critical here, because otherwise we're back getting calls and not understanding what's happening. So,
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wolfgram, but we can override this veto and then make a second motion to further clarify the direction moving forward. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and that was only my comments, that we don't just do what's on the table and then not know where we are next week. That's all.
Sure.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, just for my own clarity, even if this veto is not overturned, we can still make a motion to further clarify either way. Would that be correct?
You'd have to make a new motion essentially on that same subject. I think it's probably well enough noticed to the public that we've got an issue over meeting and how we're going to meet, that's fine on the agenda.
There we go, and I will, while we're still in discussion, the reason for the veto originally was there were people that thought, as elected officials, we should set a good example. And this is why I thought, since there was no meetings coming up realistically, and anything, as Steve said, can get in front of this body and we would discuss it anyway, that until the council was going to meet next week, it was going to be on the council agenda next week, how you all wanted to go forward. So then, and that's why I didn't think it'd be any big deal, because there was no meetings planned. But you can certainly, because this, how we go forward was going to be on next week's agenda. So, and which is why I really didn't think it would be this complicated. But you can certainly overturn it and then, in essence, move up how you want to move the meetings from next week to this week. That's easy to do. Anything further? Hap, can I just ask you, would they go ahead and just overturn this now and then make a motion to that, or should this one be amended?
No, correct. I think that right now there's a motion about the veto. That should be decided, and if there's further direction or clarification, we put that on the record so we know where we're going. And you're right. We didn't have anything on the table, but we did discuss the EDB, so if they decided to try to react here, what's the environment they're going to be doing that on? And I'm trying to avoid the call that I probably get then to try to sort that out, okay?
All right. Seeing no further discussion, then please vote. Roll call vote. I'm sorry.
So if I could, a yes means we're overriding it, Deb, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Fire? Fire?
No.
Hazel?
Yes.
Rosendish?
No.
Bargander?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Spiro?
Yes.
Butsky,
Yes.
Hendler.
Yes.
And that motion carries 8-2.
Yes.
Does anybody want to make a subsequent motion? Mr. Witzel, did I see your hand? Okay, please.
I would move to resume meetings as is necessary. Again, emphasizing that if there isn't items to be discussed, that those committees perhaps don't need to meet. I would further suggest that those that are not comfortable, whether it be staff members or elected officials or community individuals who do not feel comfortable meeting in person, that some sort of remote option be provided for those individuals, but those of us that are elected officials that wish to meet in person to be able to have a more efficient meeting, have the ability to do so.
Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Fisher, second to that motion? Any discussion? Mr. Witzel.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah. It's very clear.
Okay.
Mrs. Spiros.
Sorry about that, I lost my phone. I was just going to say, and how, for some of these committees that are full of a lot of older people, are we going to be having the chairperson? Hear me?
So her question is, for some of these other committees, will the chair determine the whether it's virtual or not? That Mr. Butsky.
I would say it should be just like staff. If you're uncomfortable meeting in person, you can do a virtual. Yeah, the chairman should not make that decision for each individual.
I saw him. Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, one thing that we keep talking about what the chairman can do and can't do. Remember, these committees don't have a chairman yet. These committees will not have a chairman until they meet. So that's one thing that has to be done too. But also, piggybacking on Mr. Bucky's comment, yeah, I think even by telephone, we've done meetings by telephone before. We didn't need to do all video. And I think that's a relatively simple technology to pull off from people who may not, from the citizen members who may not have the ability to do what we're doing tonight. So I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think it can be done. So I'm going to support Mr. Wetzel's motion.
All right, Mr. Fire.
I voted no on the last one, and I'm going to vote no on this one. Just because when my constituents call me and say, well, how come you want us to stay at home and you want to run around town and go to meetings? So I'm going to be on the right side of this, say, well, I didn't back it, so I'm going to play chicken and say, it is what it is. I think if we're telling our citizens to stay home and stay safe, we should be doing the same thing. So my no vote is representing that theory.
Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, I understand what Mr. Fire is saying, but our constituents don't have the sworn responsibility to govern like we do. We have a responsibility to all the citizens, and that is to make this government work for them, whether we've got a pandemic or not.
Mr. Fire.
I agree, but if you're telling me that all 14 of us sitting on this screen can't govern, I mean, we're not here for the good looks and for our vanity. We're here to govern. We can govern here, or we can govern 20,000 miles from here, just like we are. So it makes no difference.
And that was the argument. That was the argument that some folks, city staff, had, is the example. And so this is why, I mean, I'm okay with doing it either way. But I will say, when I heard the example, that was a big thing, because we are, Mr. Wagner, you are right. We are here to govern, but we are governing right now. We are governing in this format. I feel safe being around people with social distancing. I'm fine with that. But there is the element there, and all I'm saying is, it's okay that different people have different opinions. Mr. Butsky.
Yeah, I just heard earlier, though, 3 members of that are also on the county board, you guys met today. Well, why did you go then if you didn't feel that you were representing what the people wanted? So I think it's okay. I mean, each person can have their choice what they want to do there, and staff members as well. So I think it's a good thing.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to echo Alderman Bucky's statements. I think this motion gives people, staff, and council members the decision-making. Do they feel comfortable coming to a physical meeting? If you do not feel comfortable, do not come. If you want to set an example and you feel strongly, you can join virtually. That's what this motion allows. I think in some ways we're getting off topic here. The question is, do we want to have meetings to continue? And will you give the option to say, I want to join virtually or in person? Thank you.
All right, anything further? Steve Bark.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one more thing before it comes to the vote here. I want to talk to the city attorney for a second because I think you and I have talked about this before, this idea of whether we have a meeting in the council chambers. Let's say there's 3 members of a committee or 4 members and 1 or 2 are participating from home. What, if any, is our responsibility different to the public than it is, say, in tonight's setting where we've advertised it as a video and conference meeting? Do we have any greater obligation in terms of allowing them in the building, or can we continue to have the meeting without the public presence?
I'm going to enjoy saying that I think it's up to this body that's meeting right now to decide that, because what we essentially with the past motion, and I think that's what triggered in part the calls to me, was that we were resuming smaller committee meetings in person. If you are doing that, then you have the public coming in, and then that adds the next question, and that is, how do you plan for that? You know, we don't usually have a whole lot of attendance to those things, but you have to sort of plan for it. So, you know, my take is you have to decide that in terms of how you're advertising it. It is possible for the body to meet and to allow some members to meet in person and other members to meet virtually, and that sounds like what the motion was. But then the question needs to be, are public allowed then to attend? Are public given the option to do either? And then that does require a little bit more planning and some finesse, I think, you know, in terms of the methodology that you're going to use. But I guess you've drawn a good point that still seems open-ended unless we have direction here.
We would we would actually have to have that, the public would have to come virtually, because let's just say if all the council members here, myself and you and Deb and Steve, then we can't have the public in. We can be here because governing, we can do that, but that would be more than 10 people. So we would not be able to have the public here. So we would have it, which we could certainly do, but it would still be, it would still have to be virtual, I would think.
I think that's part of the exemption for governmental bodies, is that you could still do that, and I think that's part of the argument. And in fact, you know, when this came up last week, you know, one of the compelling reasons to have the meetings in person is because of, you know, the right to process that people have to participate in the government, and they may not all have computers, or they may have some problems doing that. And then you also have folks that are handicapped. So those reasons are also as compelling as others. But I think regardless, we should address whether we're going to do that or not do that, and how that's going to go, because staff needs to be able to plan for and be able to, you know, take care of that.
So I want to clarify my question then. So if we're all here and we're handling the meeting in person, which is fine, and there's more than 10 of us here under the Safer at Home law,
we're exempt.
Can we? No, I know we're exempt. I get that part. But what I'm saying is, can somebody coming in from the public, can they go in there because they're meeting with more than 10 people? We're exempt. We're handling, as Mr. Wagner said, the people's business. We're exempt. But what about somebody coming in? Where does that fall with them?
again, I think it's exempt. It's a governmental, it's not just the body, but it's the meeting and the process that goes into that.
Okay.
Now, when we were looking at those issues, I did discuss with staff that there were some ways to deal with that. You can give people access where you, on your notice, give some advance notice and say that, if you want to address the body, that you sign up to do that, and you either sign up to do that electronically or sign up to do it in person, but you have to do it with advance notice so that the planning can be done, so that we know that we're going to be under the numbers and or some way to social distance properly if that's going to happen.
Okay. Okay. Anything further? I thought I saw some hands up. No? All right. So, Deb, would you read the motion again then, and then we'll do a roll. Mr. Witzel.
Do we need to make an amendment to this then to include that clarification?
To me, I think that'd be helpful to staff. Is that not true, Steve?
Yeah, I agree with you, Hap, but that would be very helpful to us in terms of framing where this is going.
And it is also I'm sorry, go ahead.
And just, I'm hoping the options are clear. I mean, you can say, open it up. You could say, make it so that the intent is to allow public to deal with this by virtual attendance with the accommodation to make arrangements in advance, and we can deal with it that way. I think there are ways to do it. We just need to know and plan for that.
It's my understanding that we do not necessarily need to allow public comment period, though.
Correct. That's correct. But just, so looking at this issue as it unfolds, we're not dealing with this right now, but one of the issues that came up since the last meeting was that we have some plan commission meetings that require hearings. Those are going to require the opportunity for the public to be heard in some fashion. And, how do you do that? Since we're looking at this now, those issues do come into play.
I guess then I would look at amending this motion to allow for public comment period via some pre-sign up. Well, some pre-sign up by those members that want to address the body, because they may or may not be able to address it virtually, but I think we need to know who and when and how they're going to be coming in. So I would say any public participation and or public comment for any of these committee meetings would need to be provided for ahead of time, with those individuals alerting City Hall of their intent to participate.
Mr. Okay. Mr. Peschel, that's a second? Yeah, okay. Adam, did you have that up as a second? Or is it? What's that? Okay. So the motion and a second, a comment from Mr. Fisher.
Sorry about that. My mic was off. I will support this amendment, but one thing that I would just like to share is, again, at Wood County, the Wood County Board has encouraged all public comments to be in written form and encouraging to still have public comments, but not in person. I would just like to share that as maybe something to think about. Thank you.
All right, so there is a motion and a second. Deb, can you read the amendment? Or
Yes, the motion was to amend to allow for public comment participation via pre-sign up for those that want to address the governing body.
All right, so there's a motion and a second for that. Roll call vote, please.
Fire?
No.
Peschel?
Yes.
Rosendish?
Yes.
Argander?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Farrell?
Yes.
Butke?
Yes.
Hendler?
Yes.
All right, and then the original motion. Deb, would you read that?
Well, I'll refine it later, but the gist of it is to resume meetings as necessary. Those that are not comfortable with meeting in person, some sort of remote option will be made available. Otherwise, you can meet in person.
Thank you, and please do a roll call vote.
Certainly. Fire?
No.
Peso?
Yes.
Rosendish?
Yes.
Alexander?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Sparrow?
Yes.
Butke?
Yes.
And Handler?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item K, adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Possible acquisition of property near Highway 13 and Mann Street. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Motion by Mr. Witzel, second by Nick. Seeing no discussion, please roll call vote.
Fire?
Yes.
Peso?
Yes.
Rosendish?
Yes.
Alexander?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Witzel?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Sparrow?
Yes.
Butke?
Yes.
And Handler?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, before we go to a closed session, I'd like to ask the council to congratulate Mr. Fisher on being elected as vice chair of the county board today, and he's going to be representing Marshfield well there, I think. So congratulations, Adam.
Congratulations. All right, thank you. We are in closed session.
Yep.